When you look at a gleaming gold ring, it is easy to assume the metal came shining out of the earth. The reality starts with an avalanche of stubborn gray gravel. Forget the old myth of plucking bright yellow nuggets from the dirt. Modern gold is microscopic. To find it, mining companies have to carve out open pits of staggering scale, ripping up millions of tons of hard rock just to chase invisible traces of wealth. Extracting something you cannot even see requires a massive, multi-million-dollar industrial journey. It takes equal parts brutal mechanical engineering and highly precise chemical science to force the rock to surrender its prize. The journey starts at the plant's perimeter, a designated area known as Security Zone 7. Here, massive outdoor stockpiles hold thousands of tons of raw, pulverized ore, waiting to be processed. But successfully processing the ore is only half the battle. As the gold becomes more concentrated, it becomes a magnet for internal theft. At the same time, the chemical processes used to extract it become lethal to workers. To survive this collision of human greed and toxic hazards, the modern plant operates as a heavily surveilled, high-risk fortress where every ounce is tracked step by step through a gauntlet of extreme heat and lethal chemistry. The first major step inside the plant is the milling area. It is a cavernous, deafening environment where raw gravel meets the industrial crushers. The ore is fed into massive, rotating steel cylinders, along with water and heavy steel balls. As the machines spin, the rock violently smashes against itself and the steel, grinding down the stubborn chunks. The ultimate goal of this brute force is to create a slurry, a muddy liquid mixture of completely pulverized rock and water. By grinding the ore into a fine paste, the microscopic gold is finally exposed. This introduces our first major vulnerability. In plant security terms, this is Zone 3. Because gold is incredibly heavy, pieces of free gold naturally sink and settle in the basement floors and pump sumps beneath the loud machinery. Opportunistic thieves know this. They can use water hoses to wash the spilled slurry, intentionally separating the heavy gold sand from the lighter waste rock right there on the floor. Technology cannot easily spot a handful of wet sand leaving a noisy room. Security here relies on human guards, who must physically stand watch during maintenance, mill relining, and sump digging to ensure nobody walks away with the concentrated sediment. Brute force successfully frees the gold from the rock, but the physical weight of the metal makes it a prime target for opportunistic theft. To secure the wealth, the extraction process has to change the gold into something entirely different. Physical crushing gives way to chemical dissolution in Stage 4, the carbon-in-leach process. The slurry is pumped into massive, bubbling outdoor vats. Inside these tanks, operators inject a highly toxic chemical cocktail of pure oxygen and sodium cyanide. This solution completely strips the microscopic solid gold out of the rock, dissolving it directly into the liquid. To catch that dissolved wealth, superheated carbon granules are pumped through the tanks in the opposite direction. The dissolved precious metals naturally cling, or adsorb, straight onto the porous surface of the carbon. This is what that carbon looks like. At this stage, the gold is securely locked inside these dark, unglamorous chunks. In terms of Zone 5 security, stealing the gold is now practically impossible without sophisticated lab equipment. But while the theft risk drops, the threat to human life spikes. Cyanide gas exposure is lethal. Working around these tanks require rigid confined space protocols, specialized personal protective equipment, and highly restricted access limits to prevent accidental poisoning. Chemistry brilliantly solves the problem of pulling microscopic wealth out of liquid mud. In doing so, it creates an invisible, toxic hazard that turns this section of the plant into a highly controlled minefield. Everything feeds into Security Zone 1, the gold room. This is the absolute highest risk choke point in the entire facility. Through a process called electrowinning, superheated water washes the gold off the carbon, creating a highly concentrated liquid. An electrical current then forces the gold out of the liquid and onto stainless steel plates, yielding a dark, incredibly valuable muddy sludge. To purify that sludge, it is dried, mixed with chemical fluxes, and loaded into a furnace cranked to a blistering 1200 degrees Celsius. The extreme heat forces the impurities to the surface as a crusty waste called slag, leaving pure liquid metal underneath. Operating a furnace at these temperatures carries a constant threat of molten splashes. Workers here must wear full silver heat-reflective suits to survive a shift. Because this room holds condensed transportable wealth, it requires extreme, layered paranoia to protect. Access is governed by pre-programmed time locks, mandatory full-body searches, handheld metal detectors, and continuous multi-angle control room surveillance to watch for internal collusion. The Gold Room is the climax of the entire operation. It demands the absolute peak of both thermal engineering to finalize the product and relentless security to keep it from walking out the door. All the crushing, the chemicals, and the heat finally lead to the visual payoff. The glowing liquid fire is tipped from the crucible and poured directly into rectangular molds. When the metal cools, you get a doré bullion bar. Weighing in at roughly 20 kilograms, it is a 99% pure melt of precious metal, containing a mix of raw gold and silver. Even when the bar is solid, the threat remains. Getting that bullion out of the plant requires highly coordinated dispatch operations, relying on armed truck convoys or direct helicopter escorts to prevent external ambushes. The next time you see a piece of polished gold jewelry, remember what it took to put it into the display case. It is the physical embodiment of a multi-million-dollar gauntlet of brute force, lethal chemistry, and uncompromising surveillance.